Meaning of Maggie, Chapter 16. The best thing about Mom and Dad's honeymoon was that it wasn't just for Mom and Dad. They were taking us along too. And we were going to the beach in Florida. We said our goodbyes to Phyllis and Donnie, and a few days later the house was abuzz with the busyness of packing. I shoved my swimsuit and 15 books with my suitcase, and I was Florida ready. We left early in the morning so Dad would have time to hang with his friends at the airport before we took off. I checked one bag and Mom checked the food bag, her bag and Dad's bag, and then Layla and Tiffany checked their entire wardrobes. I didn't understand why their suitcases were so big when their clothes were so small, but whatever. We had said a million hellos to a million people, and I was told I looked just like my dad a million times, which was really starting to bother me. I didn't have a mustache. I didn't have glasses. I wasn't a dude. I was a girl, and everyone needed to just deal with it. Anyway, we finally got on the plane and buckled up, and an hour and 15 packs of pretzels later, we landed in Orlando. A shuttle took us to our hotel, where my sisters immediately changed into their teeny swimsuits and headed for the pool. Mama leathered me up in SPF 9000, and then I put on a giant shirt, picked up a book, and looked for the biggest umbrella I could find. Mom and Dad took longer to get ready because it took Mom forever to cover Dad in sunblock because he has 90% hair. But they eventually came down, and Mom waved my sisters and me over. I'm going to buy a float, and we're going to pull your dad to the water on it, okay? That sounded so crazy, but I said, that sounds crazy. There's no other way, she said. We can't carry him all the way down there. I looked at my calves. I don't know. I've been working out, and I really think we can. She laughed. I'll be back with a float. Watch your father. We looked over at Dad, who smiled and waved as he sipped on a drink with a tiny umbrella in it. Oh dear. Mom came back a little while later with the float, and we all took turns blowing it up. Once we got the last cubic inch of air in, we wheeled Dad next to the stairs that led to the beach. Okay, here's the plan, Layla said. Mom and I are going to lift Dad onto the float, and then Maggie, you grab the corner by his left foot, and Tiffany, you grab the corner by his right foot, and Mom and I will pull from the middle. What should I do? Dad asked. Try not to fall off, Mom said. Mom and Layla gathered all their strength to pick up Dad and position him on the float. Then we all took our places. Is everybody ready? Layla asked. I've never been more ready, Dad said. On a count of 3, we were off. We yanked the float across the sand with all our might as Dad sang Good Vibrations. Just when I thought my arms would fall off, we reached the water. Tiffany rummaged in her bag and brought out a mask and snorkel. Can you still do this? Of course I can, Dad declared. I am one with the sea. She strapped the mask and snorkel to his head, and we floated him out into the water, then turned him onto his tummy so he could put his face in the water while his legs dangled over the sides. Off he went, searching the sea for fish and other terrifying things. Layla stayed with him to keep him company. As we walked out of the water, Mom looked at Tiffany. Why don't you stay out with Dad, too, okay? But I want to work on my tan, Tiffany huffed. You can work on it later, I promise. Tiffany finally stopped whining and joined Layla and Dad, while Mom and I walked back up to the beach. Why didn't you want me to stay with Dad? I asked. I would have. Because I only want to worry about one person drowning at a time, Mom said. Good point. We staked out a spot with a giant umbrella and opened our giant books and started our honeymoon. A little while, and about 100 pages later, Mom decided it was time to go in, so we walked down the beach to get Dad. He was tan and sticky, and he couldn't move a muscle, even more than usual. The heat had really done a number on him, and his legs wouldn't bend and his arms wouldn't straighten. But eventually we got him stable enough on the float to drag him back up the beach. We pulled and pulled, and I think he gained 1,000 pounds in the ocean. But it didn't seem to bother him since he was having a great time telling everyone on the beach that he was really rich, and we were his servants. Finally, we got him back into his chair, and Mom wheeled him to the room while I got our things, and Layla and Tiffany stayed to soak up the last hour of sunlight. After the sun set, Mom began making us peanut butter and jelly sandwiches from the food suitcase, while Tiffany made herself a fort on the floor. I don't know why I have to sleep on the floor. It isn't fair. Mom handed her a sandwich. Well, there are only 2 beds, and Layla is your dad's favorite, and Maggie is mine. Thanks a lot. Calm down, I was just kidding. She wasn't kidding. Tiffany finally stopped pouting when Dad said we could order a movie off the TV. We all ate and showered and snuggled into our places to watch a PG-13 movie because I wouldn't watch an R-rated movie because I refuse to break the law. The rest of the honeymoon was mostly the same: sun blocking, dragging Dad down to the beach, reading under umbrellas, and then dragging Dad back up to the beach. On the very last morning, we woke up before the sun and flew home. All our dirty clothes from the trip made the biggest pile of laundry in the world. I promised Mom I'd separate the whites from the darks as soon as I unpacked my books, which I knew would take forever. And hopefully, by the time forever was over, someone else would have done it. At least that was my plan. I emptied my backpack and was lining up Emily Dickinson next to William Shakespeare when I saw there was something in Mark Twain's place on my bookshelf. It was the little man and the little woman from the top of Mom and Dad's wedding cake. Aha! In my cake coma, I'd forgotten that I'd set them there to watch over the rest of my books while we were away. I grabbed the tiny statues and ran into Mom and Dad's room to show them, but I was stopped by the smell of sick. Dad was throwing up, and Mom was holding the bathroom trash can under his chin. Is Dad okay? He threw up again, and Mom shooed me away. Yes, he's fine. Go, Maggie, I'm taking care of it. I walked out slowly just in case she needed me, but she didn't ask for help. I set the tiny man and tiny woman on their dresser. They looked like they belonged together. I was halfway out the door when I heard someone fall. I turned around. The tiny man was on the ground. Mom picked him up, and then she shut the door. Chapter 17. Mom and Dad had caught a bug while we were traveling, which was weird because the rest of us were fine. And if anyone was going to get sick, it should have been me because I'd run out of Flintstones vitamins a month ago, and Mom still hadn't restocked my supply. But for some reason, this sick bug only wanted Dad, so for 2 whole weeks, he slept and ate saltines and slept more. Finally, on the last day of June, he started feeling like a cool dude again, which was perfect timing because the 15 days of fun were only a day away. Every year, my birthday was rudely interrupted by something like Dad's company picnic, which had happened on my 10th birthday, or Layla's dance camp recital that happened on my 9th birthday, or Dad's first day of not working and subsequent time traveling that had happened on my last birthday. So I decided my birthday needed more than one day to be celebrated, it needed 15. Thus, the 15 days of fun were born. My birthday is July 15th, so celebrating every day of the 2 weeks leading up to it would make up for any potential disasters on the actual day. Mom and Dad were on board with my plan too, and they forced Layla and Tiffany on board too, which I didn't mind because whatever, I was getting 15 birthdays. On July 1st, we had a kickoff dinner of my choosing, and I chose traditional American fare since I was a traditional American. Since Dad still wasn't feeling 100%, I got to eat half his hamburger, and his potato salad, and his baked beans, and his ice cream. And then I went on an after dinner run with Tiffany that turned into a walk because we were both so full we could have died. On July 2nd and 3rd, Mom took me on a 2-day library marathon where I checked out so many books I had to let my book straps out all the way. And then on July 4th, we went downtown to see the fireworks, and Dad came along, making it his first trip out of the house since vacation. We had a great time watching the big sparkly fireworks and the little sparkly fireworks and the ones that twisted and the ones that dangled, and then Dad saying proud to be an American at the top of his lungs because he liked to humiliate us in public. And on week 2, even though Dad still wasn't all the way better, he even took me to the movies. We saw an R-rated one, even though I protested, and halfway through it, bad guys flashed on the screen, and Dad covered my eyes with his hand. He made me swear I wouldn't tell Mom, but of course I did, and then Dad got in big trouble, but not really. The next day, Layla let me ride in Bobby's truck, and we peeled out of the driveway and listened to the radio really loud, and they took me to Dairy Queen, and I got a blizzard. Even Tiffany tried to contribute to the fun by letting me have the room to myself for a whole night. That was foiled when Mom found out she wasn't really spending the night where she said she was spending the night. But watching her get in trouble was still a ton of fun. And then suddenly it was the day before my birthday, and Mom surprised me with an early present. She pushed an envelope across the dinner table. Open it. I tore through the flap and found a flyer. What's this? Mom beamed. There's a day camp for writers tomorrow at the library, and I thought you'd like to go. Great presidents have to be great writers, too, right? Writing camp! Why hadn't I known about this kind of amazing thing that existed? I gave her a hug. Thanks, Mom, this is awesome. Tiffany made a face and snorted. Nerd alert. Careful, Tiffany, Dad warned. You don't want your face to freeze that way for all eternity. I didn't care what she thought. I stared at the flyer. My first camp for grown-ups. This is perfect. I didn't do regular camp. I just wasn't an egg toss, tug of war, water balloon fight kind of girl. I was more of a sharpen pencils, deep thoughts, spill your guts kind of girl, and I was glad Mom realized that. That night, I laid out my best overalls with my best t-shirt and my new Chuck Taylors that I'd gotten on the 7th day of fun. The only thing missing was my favorite scarf. I searched high and low and even sideways under Tiffany's bed, but I couldn't find it. Writers need their rest, so I packed my book bag and decided the scarf would have to wait until morning. I woke up an official 12-year-old with an official 12-year-old stretch. I'd let myself sleep in a little later than usual because I wanted to have enough energy for what was sure to be the best birthday ever. The 14 days leading up to it had been the bee's knees, and today wasn't going to be any different. I just needed to find my scarf, and then it was off to a full day of writing and feeling and emoting, which may all have been the same feeling, but I wasn't sure. I made my debut from the hallway with a "Good morning, family," but my family didn't seem excited to see me. Tiffany was on the phone while Mom was pulling burnt muffins from the oven, and Dad and Layla were nowhere to be found. "Where is everybody? It's my birthday." Mom tossed me a hat-blackened muffin. "Your sisters are doing me a couple of favors and your dad's still in bed." I couldn't believe it. "Still in bed? It's so late." Mom found her keys in my book bag and scooted me toward the door. "Everybody will be here when you get back. Now come on, we're going to be late." "But I have to see Dad before I go. He loves wishing me happy birthday." Mom nudged me toward the garage. "He'll tell you when we get back. Let's go." I gave up and got in the car, and then I remembered I still needed my scarf. We were only at the mailbox. "Mom, we have to go back. I forgot my scarf." "There's no time, Maggie. We have to go back." "There's no time, Maggie. We're already late." "But I need it. I can't write without it." "Honey, it's July. The last thing you need is a scarf." "But I never do anything without the scarf. Do you want me to fail?" She kept driving. "No, I do not want you to fail. That's why I'm trying to get you there on time." I begged and begged, but she wouldn't budge, and all of a sudden we were at the library, and she was shoving me out of the car, and I couldn't believe she was really doing this to me on my birthday. "We're not even late. Why can't we go back? Dad can say happy birthday, and I can get my scarf. I'll be so fast, I swear." "Come on, Maggie," Mom pleaded. "Don't let this ruin your birthday." I could feel myself losing it. "Why are you trying to get rid of me? Why can't I just see Dad?" "Tell you what, I'll see your scarf. If I see your scarf when I get home, I'll bring it back to you." I swallowed my sniffles and pushed the hot tears out of my eyes. "You promise?" She held up her hand. "I swear on your sister." "Which one?" "Layla." I thought for a second. "Okay, I trust you." When I came into the library, the Arctic air made me shiver and I got mad all over again. I needed my scarf for more than writing. I needed it to protect me from hypothermia. I took a seat next to an older woman who smelled like mothballs and peppermint. There were 4 other women in the class, but no men because men aren't in touch with their feelings. The camp leader was a woman named Margot. She had short brown hair that swooped in all kinds of weird directions. She was small but on the chubby side, and she must have seen the goosebumps on my arms because she offered me her sweater, but I politely declined. I wasn't ready for anyone to be nice to me. I was still too mad. Margot talked about our class and our goals and our assignment, which was to write a piece of fiction inspired by a real event and some other stuff. But I didn't hear any of it because my mind was racing at ludicrous speed. Why couldn't we have turned around? Why didn't Dad want to see me on my birthday? Why was Mom always pushing me off like I was some kind of chore? How come every time Layla or Tiffany needed something, everyone dropped everything to get it? Didn't anyone care about me? My face flushed with hot and I asked to go to the bathroom. Margot said I could go wherever I wanted and didn't have to ask. I went into the first stall and just sat there for a few minutes thinking and thinking and thinking. Finally, I came out, splashed water on my face, and looked in the mirror. There were big, red, angry splotches on my neck. Even my neck was mad that my scarf wasn't wrapped around it. I took a few deep breaths and decided to pull it together. because this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I walked back out into the library where I saw Margot talking to a new girl. Great. Just when I thought I had the competition beat, a new girl showed up. Could this day get any worse? As I got closer, I realized it wasn't a new girl at all. It was Layla. At first, I thought Mom had sent her with my scarf, but the only thing in her hands were car keys, and they were shaking. What are you doing here? She looked at me, and suddenly I was scared. Her face was streaked with mascara. Maggie, it's Dad. He's in the hospital. A pit the size of the Grand Canyon filled my stomach. I grabbed her hand and we ran out to the car, and she drove really fast, which was against the law, but I didn't care. I asked her a million questions that she barely answered. What happened? It was a seizure. Was Mom there? No, she was on the way back from the library. Oh no, was he alone? No, Tiffany was there. She called 911. Oh God, an ambulance came? Yes. Where's Tiffany now? At the hospital with Mom. Is Dad going to be okay? Silence. Is Dad going to be okay? Silence. They don't know. Chapter 18. I felt the splotches on my neck multiply by a million. We screeched into the only open spot at the back of the hospital and ran across the parking lot, and I sang 50 Nifty United States song in my head so my legs wouldn't stop running. Layla tugged my arm through the sliding doors, down hall after hall, past gown after gown, toward an elevator that binged and opened beneath a big red sign that said Intensive Care Unit. We found Mom and Tiffany sitting on a waiting room bench. I wanted to run into Mom's arms, but her hands had a death grip on a piece of tissue that she was twisting superhumanly tight. She didn't even notice us until I sat right down next to her and asked, Where's Dad? She turned her hazel eyes toward me. Right now they were more red than green. Oh, Maggie, how was camp? Did you get a good assignment? I pulled the tissue from her hands and stared at her. Is Dad okay? And suddenly I broke down into sobs, which Mayfields don't do, because we always pull up our bootstraps, but I couldn't reach them. Not this time. Tiffany grabbed my arm and yanked me into the hallway, and I started hiccuping, crying, and although it's a little different, Mayfields really aren't supposed to do that either. Tiffany knelt next to me and shook both my shoulders. Pull it together! You're upsetting Mom. I couldn't catch my breath. I don't want Dad to die. She shook me again. Stop it! He's not going to die. What happened? She looked away. He wasn't feeling well this morning, so Mom made me call the doctor, and then she left with you, and I went to check on him, and he wouldn't wake up, so we called 911. Mom got there just when the ambulance did, and he started shaking Ann. I shook my head. I don't think I'm supposed to know any of this. Tiffany wouldn't let me go. You need to know this stuff, Maggie. You're not a little kid anymore. I yanked my arm away as hard as I could yank and yelled, Yes, I am! Tiffany yelled at me to grow up, and I yelled at her to leave me alone, and then I ran. I ran and ran. I ran down the hall, past gown after scary gown, into the elevator, down to the lobby, and out the door where I collapsed on the pavement. Maybe I should have prayed, but I knew better. If a church didn't have room for our prayers, no way did a hospital. I was crying a scary amount, and I worried I might have depleted my body's water to around 40% of its usual 80%. Why should I grow up? Every time I tried to grow up, I found out they were hiding stuff from me. Important stuff. Every time I asked for the truth, Dad told me to wait 10 years, and Mom told me I wouldn't understand. But I wanted to understand. I knew I couldn't fix Dad. No one could. But I wanted to know why all of this was happening to my family, to my dad. I wanted to know why he said bad things didn't happen to good looking people, but then they kept happening to us. I wanted to know why every time they convinced me something wasn't a big deal, it turned into an even bigger deal. I wanted to know if things would have been different if I had been there. If we had just turned around to get my scarf, if I could have just seen Dad, I could have saved him. I could have held his hand so he wasn't holding his own. I could have gotten him a popsicle. I could have stopped him from shaking. I started hyperventilating. I tried to stand up, but I fell back to my knees, and then someone picked me up. My mom carried me like she used to when I fell asleep in the car. I put my arms around her neck like I was 5 years old again. She sat me down on a bench, and then she knelt in front of me and pushed my tear-soaked hair out of my hot face. I tried to talk, but she whispered, Shh, shh, shh. Finally, I calmed down enough to ask, Is Dad okay? Still haven't heard anything. Would you tell me if you had? I'm going to tell you a story. Did I ever tell you about my mom? She hadn't. I knew she died when Mom was really little, so I never asked her about her. I don't know why. I guess to me she never really existed. I shook my head no and she went on. My mom was tall like Tiffany and kind like Layla and smart like you. And she made dinner every night. And she sat on the porch while I caught fireflies. And she read me bedtime stories. And then when I was 8, she died. And my childhood was over. My dad didn't know how to cook and clean, and so I learned how to do it. I did my homework, and then I did housework. I made my first Thanksgiving dinner when I was 9. I was a grown up before my time, and I didn't realize how much fun being young could be until I met your father. He just kind of lit up my life, and we went on adventures. And that's what I want for you, Maggie. I want you to have adventures. I want you to squeeze every ounce out of the time you have right now. I didn't know what to say, which was weird because I always know what to say. She scooted up next to me. Your dad is sick, very sick, but he's going to get better. And when he does, we're going to have a Maggie birthday do-over. I squeezed her tight. I didn't want a Maggie birthday do-over. I wanted my dad. We went back up to the waiting room, where it was minus 100 degrees. I nuzzled in close to Mom's side again, because it was warm there, because her body functioned at a temperature higher than most adults, because she had more to do than anyone else. She winked at my sisters. You know, your father, he loves making a scene. But don't worry, girls, everything's going to be okay. I felt safe next to her molten side. And I believed her. I believed her because when Mom said everything was going to be fine, then everything would be fine because Mom did everything 100%, which meant her promises were 100%, at least from now on. Mom reached into her bag and dug around for few seconds. What she found, or when she found what she was looking for, she presented it with a big ta-da! It was my scarf. She wrapped it around my neck. It was in the car. You must have left it when we went to see the fireworks. She was right. She was always right. She'd kept the scarf promise 100%, which made me believe even more that Dad would be okay. The next couple of hours were the longest hours in the history of hours. Mom was the only one allowed in to see Dad, and she would disappear for a few minutes, and then come back, and then disappear into the bathroom for a few minutes, and then come back with a new tissue to twist even tighter. And each time she'd say, "Nothing new yet." I couldn't get comfortable in the waiting room because the chairs were made out of rocks, covered in ugly mauve fabric. I tried to read a magazine, but they were at least 3 months old. And I tried to watch TV, but it was all reruns. I swear the whole place felt like it was on pause, including us. Nothing could happen until Dad was okay. Layla and Tiffany were anxiously bouncing their legs up and down. If Dad had been there, he would have said, "Turn your motors off." But Dad wasn't there. He was in a hospital room, all alone, wearing a gown we all knew he'd hate because cool dudes don't wear dresses. I listened to the clock tick, then talk, and we just kind of sat there, in silence, waiting for someone to tell us something. Other families filed in and out in varying degrees of upset, but none of them stayed as long as we did because no one loved anyone as much as we loved Dad. Tiffany got up to pace in the hall, and Mom disappeared into the bathroom again, and Layla and I just sat there in the most silent of silence. I hadn't been alone with her since the car, and before that I hadn't been alone with her since my Student of the Month breakfast. She looked really worried, like more worried than the rest of us. I felt we could both use a laugh, so I finally broke the silence. "Man, I could really use a cigarette." She laughed and sniffed. "What?" "I don't know. That's just what they say in the movies when something really intense is happening." Layla shook her head. "In what movie does that happen, Maggie?" "I can't think of one exactly, but I swear I heard it before. Maybe I read it in a book. Sounds like something they'd say in The Great Gatsby." I gave myself a 1920s gangster accent and said, "Yeah, you see, doll, I could really use a cigarette." Layla laughed again and then tried not to. "We shouldn't be laughing." "Why not?" Because this is scary. Why are you so scared? You know more than the rest of us. She came over and sat next to me, and I immediately felt weird. Layla never voluntarily sat next to me. Even at the dinner table, my chair was way at the other end. Plus, I was scared I'd smell her perfume. I was scared she'd smell her perfume, which I'd sprayed all over my body before I'd left the house. I know you're upset with Mom and Dad for not telling you everything that's been going on. Her eyes welled with tears. But I swear, as much as you wish you knew more, I double wish I knew less. You know how in Sleeping Beauty, the prince kisses the princess and she wakes up? Well, at least I hear that's how it happened. I don't like seeing kissing, so I always look away at that part. But that's kind of how I felt when Layla said what she did. A kiss didn't shake me out of sleep, her words did. And I hadn't even realized I'd been asleep, metaphorically asleep, figuratively in the dark about one thing. All that was happening wasn't just happening to me, it was happening to all five of us. And all of us were scared, all of us were confused, and none of us knew what was going to happen next. But that didn't stop Layla from taking care of Dad every morning and being Mom when Mom didn't have time to be Mom. And it didn't stop Mom from working so hard, so both at work and at home. And while Tiffany was mostly a jerk, at the same time, she was mostly brave, especially for calling 911 when she did. And Dad, he was fighting with all his might. Not just for him, but for all of us. I realized I hadn't been alone in my mission. All five of us were trying to fix Dad. At that moment, Mom burst back in through the door. Maggie, it's still your birthday. I wiped the tears from my eyes. Just a couple more hours. Tiffany came back and just in time to roll her eyes. You did get 15 whole days before today. 14, today doesn't count. Mom reached into her bag again. Well, I brought one of your presents. I meant to give it to you before your class, but she handed me the package, and I felt more terrible than I had ever felt in my life. I felt terrible as a rush of remembering reminded me of the big deal I made out of my scarf before. I looked away. I don't deserve any gifts. I'm a horrible, horrible person. That's what I've been saying all along, Tiffany said. Mom shot her a death stare and sat next to me on the bench. Of course you deserve it. Here, open it. I unpeeled the wrapping paper and pulled out the most beautiful leather-bound journal I had ever seen. It smelled old and new at the same time, and the pages were yellow like the paper the Declaration of Independence was written on. This paper was clearly for big deal writing. I pushed it away. I can't take this. It's too nice. Mom pushed it back. Exactly. You need a really nice journal to write your memoir in. This was the single best gift I'd ever received on the single worst day of my entire life. I hugged the journal close, and then I hugged Mom, and then I went to hug Tiffany, but then I remember I hated her. Mom gave Layla change for the vending machine, and she bought us 4 Otis Spunkmeyer cookies, which were delicious. Mom asked around the waiting room to see if anyone had matches, and an old man with a pipe let her have one of his, so she struck it, stuck it in my cookie, and told me to make a wish. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and wished for Dad to be okay. And it worked! An hour later, the nurse came and got us. We all walked through the hall, through the 2 giant doors, and down another hall. Mom held my hand and covered my eyes as we walked past a scary row of rooms. But even though I couldn't see it, I could smell the serious sick coming from inside. When we got to Dad's room, Mom uncovered my eyes, pulled back the curtain, and there he was. Dad smiled. I need a cocktail. Layla ran for his neck, Tiffany ran for his waist, and I ran for his legs because it was the only place left to run to. He wiggled what he could wiggle. Come on, girls, what are you trying to do? Kill me? Tiffany punched him in the stomach. Not funny. Dad pushed us all away. Everyone calm down. I'm fine. I looked around the room. Beeping machines, dripping bags, needles taped to his arms. He didn't look fine. The doctor came in a few minutes later and told us what had happened. Dad had gotten an infection that turned into a bigger infection that had caused a seizure. They had him on all the right medications now, but he'd have to stay at least a week to get the full round of drugs he needed. There's nothing to worry about, the doctor promised. This is just what happens as the disease progresses, but we know how to treat this part. Dad squeezed my hand and said, Doc, at least tell me you can get me medical marijuana. The doctor laughed, but quickly became a doctor and sternly said, No. Then Dad got really tired, so we went back to the waiting room so he could get some rest. It was all way past our bedtimes. Mom dug around in her purse for her keys. You girls go home. I'll stay here with Dad. Layla crossed her arms. We're not going anywhere, Mom. Yeah, Tiffany nodded. As long as Dad's here, we're here. I got kind of excited. We can build a blanket fort. Mom shook her head. No, just go home and get some rest. You can come back first thing in the morning. Layla refused. No way, Mom. Tiffany did too. We're not leaving you in this scary place. Yeah, lady, I said. We're like the Five Musketeers. Oh, wow, a Five Musketeers sounded a way better candy bar than a Three Musketeers. I'm imagining extra nougat. Lots and lots of extra nougat. Mom finally caved. Okay, go home and get what you need, then come back and we'll figure something out. As soon as we got home, we rushed inside and grabbed everything we needed. I went to the pantry first and got the necessities: Little Debbie's fruit snacks, granola bars. Then I went to the fridge and found juice boxes and a box of mixer just in case Dad was serious about that cocktail. Layla took sleeping bags and Tiffany took pillows, and I packed my PJs, a couple changes of clothes, and a few hundred pens. But when Layla and I were ready to go, Tiffany was nowhere to be found. I went into Dad's bathroom and found her sobbing over the sink, hugging a bottle of Listerine. Okay, I have to admit, at first I was kind of relieved to see her crying. I felt like it gave me permission to do it. But as soon as she saw me, her sobs turned to yells and she ordered me to leave. I didn't leave. I stood there cautiously, like I was standing in front of an angry bear that might charge me at any second. Since I didn't have any honey, I tried to calm her down with words. Mom says everything's going to be okay. Tiffany was opening every drawer looking for something. Dad needs floss. Do you see any floss? Dad didn't need floss, and she knew it. Dad doesn't floss, I said carefully. She slammed a drawer. Well, he should! His teeth are going to rot out of his head. She slammed more drawers like a crazy person. Tiffany, stop! You're freaking me out! You're freaked out! You weren't even here! You, you didn't even see him! Stop it! You're scaring me! Her eyes are filled with more angry tears. Good! Now you know how I felt! Layla came in and glared at both of us. Stop it, you two! Come on, Mom needs us! We walked back out through Mom and Dad's room, and I saw what I'd missed on the way in. Dad's favorite Eric Clapton shirt, ripped to pieces on the floor, stretcher wheels marked in the carpet, needle caps everywhere, and Dad's wheelchair waiting for him next to the chair. Layla told us to go get in the car, so we got in the car. Tiffany immediately began fixing her makeup in the mirror. Layla is taking this big sister thing way too far. No kidding, I agreed. She's not the boss of us. And just like that, Tiffany and I were back on neutral ground until the next masking tape line was drawn down the middle of our room. 5 minutes later, Layla appeared carrying Dad's folded up wheelchair and a giant bag of Hershey's Kisses. And not to be mean, but she had crazy in her eyes. Tiffany rolled down her window. What are you doing? Layla opened the back door and crammed the chair and the Kisses next to me. Dad's going to need his chair eventually, and he loves Hershey's Kisses. I leave 3 for him to have every day for lunch. Tiffany shook her head. Well, it's a good thing you're bringing 3,000 then. I laughed. Tiffany's meanness was actually pretty entertaining when it wasn't directed at me. We rode back to the hospital in silence. Tiffany hugged Dad's Listerine bottle while I sat as still as possible, not able to move a muscle because of Dad's chair. I couldn't even reach the Hershey's Kisses. Back in the waiting room, Mom had built us a blanket fort on the floor and was asleep in Dad's room in the chair next to his bed. Tiffany stretched out her giraffe legs and fell asleep almost instantly. I thought of the disaster in Mom and Dad's room and hoped she was going to dream about something good, like being crowned homecoming queen or prom queen or whatever other kind of queen hot girls get crowned in high school. Layla fell asleep then. It was weird seeing her because even in her sleep she looked perfect, and she didn't look crazy or scared, not even a little. When Mom came in to check on us, I didn't want her to worry, so I pretended I was asleep too. She leaned over and kissed my forehead. Good night, Maggie. Busted. I opened an eye and looked at her leaning over us. I could see every freckle on her tired face. Night, Mom, I whispered. The next morning I was the last one up. Mom must have already had a bazillion cups of coffee because she was buzzing with energy. Good morning, sunshine. Good morning, I yawned. How's Dad? She picked up my pillow. Well, there's nothing on TV. His butt hurts from sleeping on that hard bed, and his hair looks terrible. But other than that, he's much better. Want to go see him? I nodded yes, pulled on my shoes, and walked through the maze to his room, blindfolded by Mom's hand. Sunlight glared through the blinds, and painted lines across Dad's face. He looked at a bowl of jello with a fork. You gonna eat that? He pushed it towards me. It's all yours. I took a closer look at the bowl of jello. It was orange, not red. Nah, I only like the red kind. Me too. Mom went into the hall to talk to the nurse and left me alone with Dad. I thought it was going to be weird to be alone with him, but it wasn't. Despite all the machines and bags and smells, he was still just Dad. We talked about politics and music and why red jello was better than orange jello, because orange tastes too much like oranges. And then Mama reappeared with my book bag. Your sisters and I are going to go down to the cafeteria. Want to come? I almost said yes until I saw Dad's face. He looked so down. I knew I couldn't leave him alone, even if I was dying for some red jello. He'd been alone in that cold and terrible room long enough. So I stayed and made myself comfortable in the world's most uncomfortable chair. When I took out my new leather journal, Dad smiled. Oh, good, she gave it to you. You know, I picked that out myself. I turned back the cover to the first page and wrote my name. Did you really pick it out? Actually, your mother did, but it was my idea. I gave him a look. Was it really your idea? No, but your mother gets credit for everything. He laughed his cool guy laugh that usually made me feel better. But right then I didn't feel better, which I didn't understand because if Dad was feeling better, then so should I, right? I wasn't sick. I didn't have scary things in my arms and nose, but I felt terrible. I felt lost. Dad looked to me now. Sure, his face was the same. Dad looked different to me now. Sure, his face was the same, just with more stubble, and his eyes were still blue, just a little less bright. But he was hard to recognize, and not just because he wasn't wearing a rock and roll t shirt. Dad had always been an adventurer, a dreamer, which made his new state of sick all the more terrible. It was like he was a free spirit who was no longer free. I felt like begging him to tell me everything was going to be okay, that he was going to be okay. I needed to hear it from him. I needed to know he was going to be there for every single important thing. I needed him to hear my speech as high school valedictorian, where I planned on quoting Abraham Lincoln. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any one thing. And Neil Young, that really deep thing he said about burning out, not fading away. I needed him to be there for every single victory, every single prize, whether it be Nobel, Pulitzer, or Cracker Jack. I needed my dad back, the adventurer, the dreamer, the free spirit. He cleared his throat. Hey, Mags. I looked up at him and he took a deep breath. Every single blanket piled on top of him rose and then fell with his words. I'm really sorry. I thought about yelling, but I didn't. I thought about crying, but I couldn't. I thought about running away, but honestly, I was sick of running. I thought about thinking and how I needed to do more of it, even if that seemed impossible because I already thought so much. But I needed to change my thought trajectory to get closer to how I could help Dad, and Mom, and Layla, and maybe even Tiffany. And all that thinking led to one more thought. Fixing Dad didn't have to mean curing him. Fixing Dad could mean a million things. And right now it meant I should be here for him. Even though I have so many adjectives like scared, sad, confused, tired, and yes, even hungry, I should also have one more adjective. I should be brave. So I stood up and pulled up my bootstraps. I reached up to him and wrapped my scarf around his neck, and then I said to him the four words I so desperately wanted him to say to me. Dad, it's going to be okay. His face was confident, even though his voice was shaking. It's definitely going to be okay, Max. The rush of hospital cold hit my neck, and I went back to the chair and back to the open book waiting for me. Right now seemed like as good a time as any to start my very first chapter, but my mind went blank. I'm not really sure what to write. What do you think? Dad took a long sip of juice and thought about it. Well, I think you're supposed to write about what you know. So what do you know? That sounded too daunting. I knew way too many things. It would be impossible to narrow them down. I held the book for a minute and thought about it. What would you write about? He gathered all his thoughts and thoughtfully said, I'll tell you in 10 years. I pictured what he would be like in 10 years from that moment. I was going to know so much about Dad that I could write a whole book about him. I would know all of his inside jokes, And I would know about what hippies wrote in shaving cream on his car on his wedding day. And I would know every single Neil Young song, even the B-sides, bootlegs, and rarities. I would know so many other things that he would finally tell me in 10 years. But right now, I could only write what I knew right now. So I uncapped my pen and wrote the first thing that popped into my head. Beep, beep, beep. My dad won't stop beeping. The end.